If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the podcast. The last normal day at Glenelg Beach. The morning sun painted Adelaide golden on January 26, 1966. Australia Day brought families outdoors, and the Beaumont household hummed with typical holiday energy. Nancy Beaumont watched her 3 children prepare for their beach trip with the same calm she had shown dozens of times before. Jane, 9 years old and responsible beyond her years, helped little Grant tie his sandals. At 4, Grant was the baby of the family, always eager to follow his sisters anywhere. 7-year-old Arna bounced with excitement, her swimming costume already on under her dress. The 3 made an inseparable team. Their father Jim had left early for work, but this was nothing unusual. The children had been making solo trips to Glenelg Beach all summer. In 1966, such independence seemed natural. Parents trusted their neighborhoods. Children roamed freely. The 10-minute bus ride felt like an adventure, not a risk. Nancy handed them coins for the bus and treats. She kissed each goodbye around 10:15 a.m., expecting them home by 2 p.m. as always. The children walked to the bus stop, chattering about their plans. Neighbors saw them board the usual route to Glenelg. The beach that day sparkled with Australia Day spirit. Families spread blankets on the sand. Children splashed in the gentle waves. Ice cream vendors called their wares. Everything felt safe and normal. Multiple witnesses later remembered seeing the Beaumont children that morning. They played near the water, built sandcastles, and swam in the shallows. Jane kept watch over her younger siblings with practiced care. Arna collected shells. Grant laughed at the waves tickling his feet. But something changed around midday. Several people noticed the children talking with a tall, thin man. He had fair hair and looked to be in his mid-30s. The children seemed comfortable with him. They played games together. He appeared friendly, even paternal. One witness saw something puzzling. The children bought meat pies and drinks at a nearby shop. They paid with a crisp 1-pound note. This detail troubled investigators later. Nancy always gave them coins, never paper money. Where had they gotten that note? The last confirmed sighting came around 1:15 p.m. The 3 children walked away from the beach area with their towels. They appeared relaxed and willing. The tall man walked beside them. To anyone watching, they looked like a family heading home. But the Beaumont children never came home. 2 o'clock passed, then 3. Nancy began watching the street. By evening, panic set in. The perfect Australia Day had become the beginning of Australia's most haunting mystery. 3 children had simply vanished from a crowded public beach in broad daylight. What happened in those final moments? Who was the mysterious man? These questions would torment investigators and the nation for decades to come. The immediate search and growing fear. The clock on Nancy Beaumont's kitchen wall seemed to tick louder with each passing minute. 5 o'clock came and went. Then 6. The empty bus stop offered no comfort, no sign of her 3 children, who should have been home hours ago. Nancy's heart began to race. Jane was only 9, but she was responsible beyond her years. She always brought Arna and Grant home on time. Always. But children knew the rules about catching the bus. They knew their mother would worry. Something was terribly wrong. Nancy called every friend she could think of. Had anyone seen the children? Did they stop somewhere after the beach? Each phone call brought the same answer. No one had seen Jane, Arna, or Grant since morning. Jim Beaumont rushed home from work to find his wife pacing the living room. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. Together, they drove back to Glenelg Beach as darkness fell over Adelaide. The beach was nearly empty now. A few couples walked hand in hand along the water's edge. No children played in the sand. The Beaumonts searched every corner they could reach. They called out their children's names until their voices grew hoarse. The sound echoed across the empty beach, swallowed by the waves. By 9 o'clock that evening, they could wait no longer. Jim picked up the phone and called the police. The officer who answered treated their call with immediate concern. 3 children missing for nearly 12 hours was not normal. These were good kids from a good family. This was not a case of children wandering off to play. Within hours, Adelaide's largest search operation began to unfold. Police cars raced through the night streets. Officers knocked on doors, asking neighbors if they had seen anything unusual, anything at all. Trained divers arrived at the beach before dawn. They searched the waters where the children had played just yesterday. Search teams combed every inch of sand, every building, every hiding spot a child might choose. The boat harbor was drained completely. Workers pulled out decades of collected debris, hoping desperately not to find what everyone feared most. As the sun rose on January 27th, hundreds of volunteers joined the search. Teachers, shop owners, parents, entire families came to help. The story spread across radio waves and newspaper headlines throughout Australia. What had started as a mother's worry had become a national mystery. 3 children had simply disappeared from a busy beach on a summer afternoon. No one saw them leave. No one knew where they had gone. The search continued, but deep down, everyone sensed this was no ordinary case of lost children. The mysterious fair-haired man. The beach was busy that Australia Day morning. Families spread their towels on the warm sand. Children splashed in the shallow water. Nobody knew they were watching something that would haunt the nation for decades. Mrs. Langdon was sitting nearby when she first noticed the man. Tall and thin with fair hair bleached by the sun. His skin was deeply tanned, like someone who spent every day outdoors. He looked about 35 years old. Swimming trunks clung to his lean frame. What caught her attention was how he played with 3 children, a girl with long blonde hair and 2 younger boys. They seemed comfortable with him. The man threw them high in the air as they squealed with delight. He helped them build sandcastles. When they ran into the waves, he followed. Other people saw him too. A woman walking her dog noticed how the children hung on to his every word. A couple eating lunch watched him buy the kids ice cream from a vendor. Everyone remembered the same details. Fair hair, tan skin, friendly smile. At first, nobody thought anything strange was happening. The man seemed kind. The children appeared happy. Maybe he was their uncle or a family friend. Beach days often brought together people who knew each other. But as the hours passed, something shifted. The man and children walked away from the beach together. They climbed the steps leading to the street above. That was the last anyone saw of Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont. When their parents reported them missing, police talked to everyone who had been at the beach. The stories matched perfectly. Same man, same description, same activities, but nobody knew who he was. The friendly stranger suddenly became something much darker in people's minds. Questions arose that nobody could answer. Why had the children trusted him so completely? How did he convince them to leave with him? Where did they go? Police artists worked with the witnesses to create a drawing of the man's face. The image appeared in every newspaper across Australia. Tips flooded in from people who thought they recognized him. Each lead seemed promising at first. Each one eventually led nowhere. Years passed. Suspects came and went. Men with fair hair and tan skin found themselves questioned by police. Some had solid alibis. Others seemed suspicious but couldn't be connected to the children's disappearance. The case files grew thicker, but answers remained out of reach. The fair-haired man became a ghost, always there in witness statements and police sketches, yet never found. He represented both hope and frustration. If authorities could identify him, they might solve the mystery. But he stayed hidden, keeping his secrets locked away. Decades later, people still wonder who he was. Did he take the children, or did something else happen after they left the beach together? The questions multiply, but the answers stay buried in time. Confusing clues and hoax letters. The first strange clue came from a young woman working at Wenzel's bakery. She remembered 3 children who matched the Beaumont description perfectly. They had come in to buy meat pies that day. What made her remember wasn't their faces or their clothes. It was the money they used. The girl at the counter watched as one of the children pulled out a crisp 1-pound note. She found this odd. Most kids their age carried coins, not paper money. Nancy Beaumont had given her children only small coins that morning, enough for bus fare and maybe a treat at the beach. So where did this large note come from? Police began to piece together a troubling picture. Someone had given the children money, someone who wasn't their parents. This stranger theory grew stronger with each passing hour. But the money mystery was just the beginning. Search teams combed Glenelg Beach and the surrounding areas. They looked under every rock and behind every building. The children's belongings had simply vanished. No towels, no bags, no clothes left behind on the sand. It was as if the 3 had planned to disappear forever. Weeks turned into months. Then something even more disturbing began happening at the Beaumont home. Letters started arriving. Handwritten notes claiming to know where Jane, Arna, and Grant were hiding. The first letter was brief and cruel. It said the children were alive and well. It promised more information would come soon. Jim and Nancy Beaumont held each other and wept. Hope mixed with fear in their hearts. More letters followed, each one more detailed than the last. One writer claimed to be holding the children in a safe place. He wanted to return them, but needed to meet the parents first. Police set up surveillance for the planned meeting. Officers hid in bushes and parked in unmarked cars. They watched every shadow and followed every suspicious person. Nobody came. The letters kept arriving anyway. Each false promise cut deeper than the last. Nancy would rush to the mailbox every morning, her hands shaking as she sorted through bills and advertisements. These hoax letters did more than break hearts. They pulled police away from real leads. Officers spent countless hours following fake clues while the true trail grew colder. Someone was playing a sick game with a family's pain. The question remained, were these letters connected to the disappearance, or just the work of twisted minds seeking attention? Investigation expands across regions. The next morning brought a cold reality. The children had vanished without a trace from Glenelg Beach. Police knew they needed to cast a wider net. Detective Lawson gathered his team in the cramped station room. Coffee cups sat half-empty on wooden desks. Maps of Adelaide covered every wall. Red pins marked where people last saw the Beaumont children. "We go back to every witness," Lawson said. His voice was tired but firm. Someone saw something they forgot to mention. Officers knocked on doors again. They asked the same questions in different ways. What time exactly? Which direction? Did you see anyone following them? The ice cream vendor scratched his head. The postman checked his watch twice. A woman walking her dog suddenly remembered something strange. There was a man, she whispered. He kept looking at families on the beach. Meanwhile, divers suited up at the boat haven. The murky water held secrets. They searched every corner of the marina. Boats bobbed above them as they felt along the muddy bottom. Nothing. Empty bottles, lost fishing hooks, old ropes, but no trace of 3 missing children. The search grew bigger each day. Police cars drove through Adelaide's quiet suburbs. Officers walked through empty lots and checked abandoned buildings. They searched old quarries where teenagers sometimes played. Every shed, every basement, every place children might hide or be hidden. Phone calls poured into the station. A baker saw 3 children near a bus stop. A farmer noticed strange tire tracks in his field. A grandmother was sure she spotted them at the train station. Each call sparked hope. Each one led nowhere. Radio announcements crackled across South Australia. Anyone who saw the Beaumont children, please call immediately. Newspapers printed their school photos on front pages. Jane's sweet smile, Arna's bright eyes, Grant's mischievous grin. The children's faces stared back from every corner shop window. Teams searched properties belonging to anyone who seemed suspicious. They drained water tanks and dug through vegetable gardens. They searched beach houses and holiday cabins. Rural areas that once seemed peaceful now felt threatening. Days turned into a week. Hope began to crack like old paint. The massive search consumed police resources. Every available officer worked the case. Normal duties were forgotten. Adelaide had never seen anything like this. Parents across the city held their children closer. Beach visits stopped. Playgrounds emptied earlier. The whole state was watching, waiting, wondering what had happened to 3 innocent children who simply wanted to spend Australia Day at the beach. Time was running out. Everyone knew it, but nobody said it aloud. The impact on the community and media. 3 children vanished on a summer morning, and nothing was ever the same again. News traveled fast in 1966, but not like this. Radio voices carried the story across kitchen tables where mothers froze over their morning coffee. Television anchors spoke with unusual gravity as fathers leaned forward in their chairs. The Beaumont children had simply disappeared, and somehow everyone knew this was different. Within days, newspapers from Perth to Brisbane carried their photographs. Jane's serious eyes, Arna's gentle smile, Grant's cheeky grin. These weren't just missing children anymore. They had become Australia's missing children. Parents who had never locked their doors began turning keys at night. Children who had roamed neighborhoods until sunset found themselves called home before dark. The easy trust that had defined suburban life started cracking like old paint. Glenelg Beach had been Australia's playground. Families packed sandwiches and headed there for carefree days by the water. Now, mothers counted heads constantly. Fathers stayed closer to their children. The jetty, where tourists once strolled, became a place people hurried past. Something deeper was shifting across the nation. Police stations received calls about strangers in parks. Schools began teaching lessons they had never needed before. Words like stranger danger entered everyday conversation, though the phrase wouldn't become common for years. Television crews returned to Adelaide every January. the anniversary became a ritual of remembrance and renewed searching. Each year brought fresh hope and familiar heartbreak. The children's faces aged in police sketches, but their story remained frozen in time. Radio talk shows discussed the case for decades. Listeners called with theories, memories, and questions that had no answers. The mystery had woven itself into the national conversation, surfacing whenever other children went missing or when safety was questioned. Teachers began lessons about staying close to parents. Playground supervisors watched more carefully. Community groups formed to discuss child protection, a concept that had barely existed before 3 children walked to the beach and never came home. The ripples spread far beyond Adelaide. Perth mothers held their children's hands tighter at shopping centers. Brisbane fathers asked more questions about where their kids were playing. Sydney families changed their weekend routines without even realizing why. Australia had lost something precious that January morning. Not just 3 beautiful children, but a kind of innocence that could never be recovered. The nation had learned that terrible things could happen to anyone, anywhere. Even on the most ordinary summer day, the Beaumont children had become more than a mystery. They had become a warning that changed how an entire country thought about protecting what mattered most. Years of cold case efforts, the phone rang at 3 in the morning. Detective Sarah Mills reached for it with tired hands, knowing that cold cases never truly sleep. Another tip about the Beaumont children. Another possible lead that might change everything. For 50 years, the filing cabinets in Adelaide held their secrets. Box after box of witness statements, photographs, and evidence from that summer day in 1966. The original detectives had retired. Some had died, but the case lived on, passed down like a sacred trust from one generation of officers to the next. Every few months, someone would call. They remembered a strange man at the beach. They knew someone who acted oddly around children. They had seen something years ago that suddenly made sense. Each tip was logged, checked, and followed up. Most led nowhere, but hope never died. Technology began to change the game in ways those first investigators could never imagine. Computers replaced handwritten notes. DNA testing became possible from the smallest traces. Ground-penetrating radar could see through soil and concrete, searching for answers buried long ago. Detective Mills often wondered what the original team would think of these new tools. Machines that could analyze a single hair. Cameras that could enhance old photographs beyond recognition. Software that could match faces across decades of aging. The department brought in fresh eyes every few years. Young detectives would spend months reading through the files, looking for patterns the veterans might have missed. They interviewed witnesses who were now elderly, hoping memory might have shaken loose some forgotten detail. Science moved forward, but the children remained missing. DNA samples sat in laboratories, waiting for a match that never came. Radar swept through backyards and vacant lots, finding buried pipes and old foundations, but never the evidence they desperately needed. Other cases from the same era began to yield their secrets. Bodies were found. Killers were caught decades after their crimes. Modern forensics solved mysteries that had seemed hopeless. Yet the Beaumont case remained as puzzling as ever. The frustration was real. Officers would spend months chasing a promising lead, only to watch it crumble under careful investigation. False confessions came regularly from people seeking attention or struggling with mental illness. Each one required hours of verification and disappointment. Still, they never gave up. New suspects emerged from prison records and old police files. Men who had committed similar crimes in other places. Patterns that seemed to fit. None proved to be the answer, but each possibility had to be explored completely. The case file grew thicker with each passing year, filled with the careful work of dedicated investigators who refused to let 3 children be forgotten. Recent excavations and renewed hopes. The year 2007 brought fresh hope to Adelaide. Police trucks arrived at a property in North Plympton before dawn. Heavy machinery followed close behind. News crews gathered at the fence line, their cameras ready to capture what might finally be the answer. Detective Inspector Greg Hutchins stood in the morning mist, watching forensic geologists prepare their equipment. Ground-penetrating radar would scan beneath the earth. Soil samples would reveal secrets buried for 40 years. The technology was nothing like what existed in 1966. This dig came from a witness statement. Someone claimed they knew where the Beaumont children lay. The informant spoke of disturbed ground and guilty confessions overheard decades ago. Each word sparked enough doubt to justify the excavation. The radar operator moved slowly across the yard. His machine sent signals deep into the soil. Strange patterns appeared on the screen. Dark patches suggested something was different below. The soil layers didn't match what should be there naturally. Hope rippled through the crowd of reporters. Families watching on television held their breath. Perhaps this would be the moment everything changed. The moment Jane, Arna, and Grant could finally come home. Diggers carved into the earth with careful precision. Each scoop revealed more unusual soil composition. The forensic team found layers that seemed out of place. Different colors mixed where they shouldn't be. Chemical tests confirmed human activity had disturbed this ground. But hours passed without finding what everyone hoped for. The anomalies led nowhere. No bones appeared, no clothing fragments, no answers waited in the dirt. By evening, officials delivered the familiar disappointment. The soil disturbances came from old septic systems and garden renovations. Another false lead, another dead end. The same scene repeated across Adelaide in the following years. Castalloy Factory in 2013. Various suburban properties. Each time, sophisticated tools detected irregularities in the earth. Each time, public excitement reached fever pitch. Each time, the results crushed hopes again. Modern forensic geology could detect the smallest disturbances. Spectrometers analyzed soil composition down to molecular levels. Three-dimensional scanning mapped underground spaces with incredible detail. Yet none of this advanced technology brought the children closer to home. Critics began questioning the reliability of witness statements and tipsters. Why chase every claim? Why raise false hopes repeatedly? Some suggested the searches created more pain than progress. Still, families of the missing understood the compulsion to keep looking. Every anomaly in the soil represented possibility. Every excavation site held the chance for closure. The sophisticated tools gave investigators confidence that if something was there, they would find it. The crushing reality remained unchanged. Despite decades of searching with increasingly powerful technology, the Beaumont children seemed to have vanished without leaving any trace behind. Enduring questions and unresolved mysteries. The years rolled by like waves against an empty shore. Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont became more than just 3 missing children. They became Australia's greatest question mark. Every January 26th, The anniversary arrives like clockwork. Newspapers dust off old photographs. Television producers create new documentaries. The same grainy images appear again and again. 3 smiling faces frozen in time, forever young, while the world aged around their memory. Jim and Nancy Beaumont never moved from their Adelaide home. They kept the children's rooms exactly as they were. Toys waited on shelves. Beds remained neatly made. Hope lived in those quiet spaces, stubborn and painful. Nancy would sometimes set 4 places at the dinner table, out of habit, then quietly remove the extra settings with shaking hands. The police files grew thicker each year. Hundreds of suspects, thousands of tips. Psychics offered visions. Criminals confessed to crimes they never committed. Every lead led nowhere. Every promising breakthrough crumbled under investigation. Australia changed after that summer day in 1966. Parents held their children's hands tighter. Beaches felt different. The carefree innocence of childhood seemed more fragile somehow. The Beaumont case became a warning whispered from parent to child across generations. Detectives retired with heavy hearts, carrying the weight of unanswered questions. New investigators inherited the cold case files, determined to succeed where others had failed. The mystery outlived careers, outlived decades, outlived hope itself. Books were written. Television shows dramatized the disappearance. True crime enthusiasts debated theories online. The children became famous in the strangest way possible. Everyone knew their names. No one knew their fate. Some suspected the man at the beach who bought them ice cream. Others believed organized criminals were responsible. Theories pointed to drifters, neighbors, strangers passing through town. Without evidence, every possibility remained just that, a possibility floating in darkness. The hardest truth settled slowly over Adelaide. Some mysteries refuse to be solved. Some questions echo forever without answers. The Beaumont children joined that special category of cases that haunt investigators and captivate the public precisely because they remain incomplete. Nancy Beaumont died in 2019, still waiting for her children to come home. Jim passed away 5 years later. They carried their grief to the grave, never knowing what happened that bright Australia Day morning when 3 children walked out of their lives forever. Today, the case remains open. Somewhere in police files, photographs still wait for the right person to recognize a face, remember a detail, speak a truth that could change everything. The Beaumont children remain Australia's most famous missing persons, a reminder that some secrets keep themselves buried deeper than anyone can dig.